Okay, welcome everybody back to the meeting January 26th, open session. We just had closed session and I would like to rise and report on that closed session. The meeting was called to order at 6 p.m. in open session with a motion presented and passed to move into closed session to receive information regarding a personal matter regarding an identifiable individual and a litigation matter. And that was dealt with, and we're now moving on to the mayor's remarks, which are scant for sure. Please note this meeting is being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the township website and youtube.com. The national anthem is not going to be played due to electronic issues. We'll resume playing once we're back in council chambers. Police Service Board's meeting meets electronically this Thursday at 8:30. And our next regular meeting of council will be held Tuesday, February 16th at 7 p.m. As I say, not a lot going on. It's been fairly quiet. And now I look to see if any councillors have any remarks or comments, general in nature. Okay, seeing none. Adoption of our previous council minutes. Sorry, Will?
Councillor Cridlin had a comment.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead, Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to make mention that I was lucky enough again to be sent through the Taxpayers' Grace to the Rural Ontario Municipality Association conference again this week, and again excellent panel discussions and updates from many ministers. And I know another council was able to also participate for this. So again, thanks to the residents of Waynflete for sending us.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm guessing that was Councillor Waynflete that also attended. So good information, good knowledge for us here in the township by two councillors who attended. So excellent. So we move on to in the agenda, adoption of our previous council meeting minutes, January 5th, 2021. In review of those, is there any comment or discussion? Okay, seeing none, make a motion those minutes of regular council meeting held January 5th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Gilmore, I think I saw your hand up. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, opposed or in favor, Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Waynflete?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
And I am in favor. Those are carried. Minutes of the special meeting scheduled on January the 19th, 2021. Are there any comments or corrections on those council minutes? Okay, seeing none. The motion being that those minutes, the special meeting of council held January 19, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Waynflete and Councillor McClellan. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, recorded vote. Councillor Waynflete.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. Those are carried. Okay, we're going to move on to our first public meeting. We have 3 this evening. And I have to read the following. Zoning Bylaw Amendment Z01 2021 debut 41027 Wilson Road. In accordance with the Planning Act, a public meeting is held for applicants to present their proposal to the public and for council to receive comments from the public. Staff and council will not make a recommendation or decision on the proposal at the public meeting. A planning report will be brought forward by staff and considered by council at a later date. As a member of the public, you are welcome to request to be notified of any future public or council meetings regarding this matter. Please provide your contact information to the deputy clerk at, I won't spell it, it's just at the office. It's Meredith Chufatelli at waynflete.ca. You can call the office and get her email address there. It's easier. Okay, so now pass it over to our planner, Sarah, to speak to this application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To all of council, the subject lands are located on the east side of Wilson Road between Feeder Road East and Garinger Road, and known municipally as 41027 Wilson Road. The subject lands are 18.83 hectares in size, and it's currently being used for residential and agricultural purposes. The surrounding land uses include residential and agricultural. So the subject lands were the subject of a severance application, file B01-2021, which was provisionally approved by the Committee of Adjustment at their hearing on January 20th. The approved severance was for a 1.91 hectare lot as a surplus farm dwelling. So the application before council proposes to rezone part 2 from an agricultural A2 zone to an agricultural A2-1 zone to prohibit dwellings, and to an agricultural A2-69 zone to recognize a reduced lot area of 16.92 hectares, where the minimum of 40 hectares is required. In terms of agency comments received, we circulated to a variety of external agencies. The region of Niagara noted no objection, as the zoning amendment is required to comply with provincial and regional policy for surplus farm dwelling applications. We did receive no objection from Enbridge, and we're still waiting on a few other agencies to comment. Those comments, once received, will be addressed in the forthcoming staff report. There have been no written comments, public written comments received to date, and we don't have any registered speakers from the public for this file.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Any questions by any of our councillors? Okay, not seeing any. Now call upon those members of the public who are attending online and wish to speak this evening. Please raise your hand electronically, and when called upon, state your name, spell your surname for the record, and provide your address prior to making your presentation. Okay, so just identify yourself and your name, spell your last name and your address, please. Okay, and Meredith, I guess you're going to select them and bring them in, or I don't see.
For you, Mr. Mayor, if there's nobody with their hand up in the gallery here, then there is nobody to speak to the application.
Okay, just making sure there's no one to speak to this application, correct? No one has their hands raised electronically? Okay. Now pass it over to the planner to speak to the next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I mentioned, a planning report regarding a complete review of the proposed amendment will be brought forward at a later date. And at that time, it will be a staff report and a bylaw for council's consideration. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the township regarding the proposed zoning amendment before council gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So for anyone watching this evening, if they want to contact me with some written comments, we can include that in the forthcoming staff report.
Okay, thank you. And if there's nothing further, if you wish to be, as per what Sarah said, if you wish to be notified of the passing of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or the refusal of the request to amend the zoning bylaw, you must make a written request to the deputy clerk. Okay, that concludes that public meeting. We're moving on to the next one, zoning bylaw amendment Z02-2021W, vacant lot at Wellingport Road. In accordance with the Planning Act, a public meeting is held for applicants to present their proposal to the public and for council to receive comments from the public. Staff and council will not make a recommendation or decision on the proposal at a public meeting. A planning report will be brought forward by staff and considered by council at a later date. As a member of the public, you are welcome to request to be notified of any future public or council meetings regarding this matter. Please provide your contact information to the deputy clerk, and you can reach us Meredith Chufatelli at waynflete.ca. You can phone the office to get the exact email address and send her that information. I'll now pass this public meeting over to our planner to speak to the issue. Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to all of council, the subject property is located on the east side of Wellingport Road, between Highway 3 and Wilford Road. The subject property is 4.25 hectares in size and is currently being used for agricultural purposes. Surrounding land uses include residential, agricultural, and industrial. The application proposes to rezone the subject lands from agricultural A2-1 to an agricultural A2-70 zone to permit a single detached dwelling with a minimum southerly side yard setback of 70 meters. The proposed amendment also introduces an environmental protection overlay on part of the subject lands to protect the natural heritage features and their associated buffers. In support of the application, a planning justification report was provided by Upper Canada Consultants, and that report is undergoing technical review as part of the application review. In terms of agency comments that we've received to date, the MPCA has provided comment and noted no objection to the proposed amendment and highly encourages the environmental protection overlay for the regulated features. They did also note that floodplain mapping would be required prior to commencement of any works on site. I will clarify that request in a subsequent staff report, as that was not originally identified at the pre-consultation stage. So I'll have further comment on that through the staff report. We don't have any written public comments received to date, but we do have the applicant's agent, Matt Kernahan, from Upper Canada Consultants, who will provide a brief presentation to council regarding the proposed amendment. So with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I will turn it over to Matt to make his presentation, and then we can go through with questions from council.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Kernahan. That's Kernahan. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants, and I'm the agent representing Mr. Zavitz, who owns the property that's subject to this public meeting. My address, the address of my office for the record, is 30 Hanover Drive in St. Catharines, Unit 3. And as Sarah mentioned, with your permission, I'm going to provide a brief presentation just to supplement what planning staff's already provided. So I'm just going to share my screen. I trust council can all see the contents of my screen as of now.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So, as was mentioned, subject property is located on Wellingport Road. It's north of the municipal address 54029. The lot is approximately 4.25 hectares or 10.5 acres in size, and it has approximately 110 meters of frontage on Wellingport Road. The property is currently used for agricultural purposes and presently has no buildings. To the rear of the site, there's a significant woodland and provincially significant wetland, and there are also 2 regulated water courses on site. The proposed dwelling and associated private services are located a considerable distance away from the natural features around the subject property, and they're not considered to pose any harm to them. The region and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority both confirmed through the pre-consultation process that they didn't require any sort of study of these features. Mr. Zavitz, who owns the subject lands, has owned it for some time, and he's been leasing it to a local farmer. The site currently has a site-specific zoning on it, which permits agricultural uses, but not dwellings. There are 2 separate employment uses within the proximity of the subject site, which town staff have indicated is the reason for the site-specific zoning, which prohibits dwellings. The purpose of the requested zoning change is to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling on the property, which is intended for Mr. Zavitz's son. Proposed zoning also seeks to establish appropriate setbacks from the employment uses to the south to ensure future residents of the dwellings are not bothered by these uses, and vice versa. Lastly, the proposed site-specific zoning seeks to apply some restrictions to development around the watercourse and wetland to ensure that these features are protected in the long term. This slide shows the conceptual site plan for the development of the property. You can see that an approximately 2,500 square foot single family dwelling can fit on the site with quite a bit of space to spare. Private septic system is shown to the south. This plan shows the dwelling with a 15-meter front yard setback, which is the normal requirement in the agricultural zone. The plan also demonstrates a 70-meter southerly side yard setback, which exceeds the normal requirements and is meant to provide separation between the dwelling and these employment uses to the south. The water courses are both shown with 15-meter buffers. The owner's intention would be to establish an amenity area around the house and continue to farm the balance of the property. This slide demonstrates the location of the proposed dwelling relative to the uses to the south. As you can see, the dwelling would be located further away from these uses than 3 other existing dwellings that are located in the neighborhood now. The proposed dwelling will have significant setbacks from both the transportation uses, outside storage uses, and the contractor's facilities to the south. In order to justify this proposed zoning change, from a land use planning perspective, a sensitive land use assessment was completed in accordance with the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change D6 guidelines. The analysis concluded that the proposed zoning that includes a minimum southerly side yard setback of 70 meters and the existing vegetated buffer along the northerly property boundary of 54028 Wellingport Road will effectively mitigate the impacts of the existing facilities located here. And the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is therefore consistent with the MOE D6 guidelines. This slide shows the southerly views from the area on the property where the dwelling would be located. As you can see, there is a vegetated buffer between the transportation use to the south that will screen it from view. The bottom picture shows the contractor's facility immediately to the south. As you can see, once again, some outdoor storage is visible. However, the impact of these views could effectively be mitigated and addressed through the installation of a fence or vegetation on the Zavitz property. It could also be dealt with through the placement of windows within the dwelling. In conclusion, I'll say that my submission to you this evening is that the application is appropriate for the responsible use of the lands. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and it conforms to relevant provincial plans and local planning documents. The application proposes a compatible and appropriate development for the subject lands and represents good land use planning. And with that, I'll thank you and offer to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'll look to council for any questions. Okay, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I don't know that this isn't to the consultant, so probably to Sarah, but I think you commented whether or not this was in a hamlet or not. You could just clarify that. And then I might have one other comment. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cridland. No, this property is not within a hamlet. So it's just outside of the hamlet boundary for Wellingport.
Okay, Councillor Cridland, with your second question.
Yes, I guess through you to Sarah, again, we've captured, I think, all the conflicts that is surrounding this property. So I'll just look to hear more about that maybe in your final report. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Just one point of correction, Sarah, that's just outside the boundary from Henderson Corners, not Wellingport.
Yes, sorry. My apologies. That's correct. It's Hendershot Corners is a hamlet right there. Wellingport is further north.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. Any other questions by councillors? I have one to the presenter. He used the term sometime the ownership by Mr. Zavitz. Can we define that a little bit better than sometime, just for the public, how long he's owned it?
to Mr. Mayor, I don't have that information at my fingertips, but certainly I will provide that to Sarah so she can include it in her recommendation report as a follow-up to this meeting.
Thank you. I know it's a long time family there, but just for the public, sometime is, you know, we should probably have a little bit more accuracy there than that definition. So just for the public clarity. Okay, so no other questions? Okay, seeing none. I'll now call upon those members of the public who are attending online and wish to speak to this evening. Please raise your hand electronically, and when called upon, state your name, spell your surname for the record, and provide your address prior to making your presentation. Okay, I'll look. Meredith, are you able to see if anyone's online there raising their hands? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, there's nobody wishing to speak.
Nobody wishes to speak to this issue? Okay, I'll pass it over to our planner for the next steps.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So a planning report will, regarding a complete review of the application and reviewing all agency comments will be brought forward at a later date. So if any member of the public watching this evening has any further comments that they would like to make, they can contact me. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting and or make written submissions to the township regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment before council approves or gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so.
Okay, thank you. And the final comment by myself, if you wish to be notified of the passing of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or the refusal of the request to amend the zoning bylaw, you must make written request to the deputy clerk. Okay, and that concludes that one. Moving on to our third one, zoning bylaw amendment Z03 2021W, a vacant lot, highway number 3 in Pettit Road. In accordance with the Planning Act, a public meeting is held for applicants to present the proposal to the public and for council to receive comments from the public. Staff and council will not make a recommendation or decision on the proposal at a public meeting. A planning report will be brought forward by staff and considered by council at a later date. As a member of the public, you are welcome to request to be notified of any future public or council meetings regarding this matter. Please provide your contact information to the deputy clerk, who can be reached here at the township office. I'll now pass it over to the planner to speak to this application, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the subject property is located on the south side of highway number 3 between Case Road and Pettit Road and is located within the hamlet of Winger. The subject property is 9.33 hectares in size and is currently being used for agricultural purposes. Surrounding land uses include residential, agricultural, and commercial. And the subject lands were the subject of a severance application, file B03-2021, which was provisionally approved by the Committee of Adjustment at their January 20th hearing. That approval is for a severance of a 1-acre lot with frontage and access to Highway 3. So the application proposes to rezone this 1-acre lot of the subject property from a Development D zone to a residential R1 zone to permit a single detached dwelling within that proposed lot. So the rest of the lot will remain zoned Development D. Through the application submission, a number of documents were submitted in support of the application. This includes a stage 1 and 2 archaeology assessment, a hydrogeological assessment, and a phase 2 environmental site assessment. And these documents are currently undergoing technical review, and I'll have more detail on them through the planning report that will be forthcoming. In terms of agency comments, the MPCA noted no objection to the proposed amendment. The region of Niagara noted no objection, provided the water course containing type 2 fish habitat as well as an associated 15-meter buffer is placed into an appropriate conservation zone. Again, I'll have more detail about that in my planning report. Currently, the zoning bylaw doesn't recognize the watercourse as having type 2 fish habitat, so the region is requesting that we reflect that through this zoning amendment. The region also requested either the use of a holding provision or that consideration of the zoning amendment be withheld until the acknowledgement letter from the ministry is received regarding the archaeology assessment. So when an archaeology assessment is completed, kind of one of the last steps is having that submitted to the ministry, who reviews it to ensure that the appropriate guidelines were followed, and the ministry then issues a letter. So part of the region's comments were that either if we don't have that letter in advance of approving the zoning amendment, that a holding provision could be used. So again, I'll have ongoing discussions with the applicants about that, and we'll have further detail in the forthcoming planning report. We did recently receive one comment from the public, so Jim Tucker and Barbara Kerpita, I hope I'm saying that right. And they noted some concern regarding access for the property, and particularly concern about construction vehicles using Pettit Road, because Highway 3 doesn't have much of a shoulder there. And so there might be some concern in terms of construction vehicles accessing. Again, I'll have more detail on these comments and address those comments in the forthcoming staff report. I'll turn it over to the mayor now for any questions from council. I don't see the applicant on board here just yet.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council on this? Any members of council wish to speak to it? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Sarah. The rest of the parcel is still then zoned development, is what I've understood. And if this property is built up, what would be the access points then if there was interest in developing the rest of the parcel? So there is just that tiny little piece left off Pettit Road. So again, you can just add that to your report as to how future applications in that would then evolve if it, in the next years or after official plan or whatever. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I can provide some comment on that right now. So when the property owner approached the township for different development options for the property, right now it has access to both Highway 3 and Pettit Road. Tried to work really closely with the Ministry of Transportation to see if they would allow a road access to Highway 3 should that parcel be developed. Wasn't successful with that. They have a policy document for access to rural communities, access to their provincial highways. And so they wouldn't allow a new municipal road to connect to Highway 3 at that location. They have permitted the applicant to upgrade their farm entrance from Highway 3 to a residential access. So unfortunately, that eliminates the opportunity for a potential through road from Pettit to Highway 3 because of ministry rules and guidelines for access. So in terms of the severance and the zoning amendment for this one lot, it will cut off the rest of the lot from access to Highway 3. So the sole access will come off of Pettit Road, but again, I will go into detail in my forthcoming staff report regarding that.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, Councillor Cridland?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Sarah. I guess I can't tell by the width of the one on Pettit Road whether that will still facilitate then the block having development opportunity, because we are in the hamlet here. Am I correct? So that is where we would, look to the future of any kind of build out. So thank you. You've covered it, and I'll just wait for the report. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I think Councillor Gilmore, you had a question.
Yeah, just to pick up on Councillor Cridland's comment, that was my concern as well. The drawing shows that access is 20.1 meters, which is just barely, and maybe not quite barely, wide enough for the normal road allowance for a road that the township would assume. What I don't want to do is get into the situation that we're under inside Road 20, where the lots were all laid out and there wasn't enough room left for the road to service the lots in behind, rightly or wrongly. But so my question is, 20.1 meters is, I believe, just under 66 feet. So is that enough for a road that the township would assume sometime in the future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilmore. Yes, so the minimum width for a municipal road allowance is 20 meters. So they've got enough there to come in off of Pettit Road. And that's certainly conversations I've had with the applicant in terms of potential design of the remnant parcel. But they do have sufficient access to have a new road allowance come off of Pettit Road.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Vliet.
My question's for you, Sarah. For the remainder lot, the one that would be in development, there's a municipal drain that runs through there. I'm assuming you're going to address that in your report?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Van Vliet. Yes, I'll address that in my report with respect to some of the comments provided by Niagara region about fish habitat. The proposed lot is kind of well outside of the buffers associated with the municipal drain. So there's no environmental impact to that. But certainly further development of that parcel will have to look at the municipal drain and potential impacts to that. So in my report, I'll touch on the drain a little bit, but most of the focus will be if a future application for development of that parcel comes in, there'd be some environmental review for that.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Okay, any other questions from councillors?
Excuse me.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm Liz Hessels. I'm up there. I've been listening, but I guess my video does not work. So.
Yeah, just a second, Ms. Hessels. I'll get to you in just 1 minute. I see your hand up there. So
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now call upon those members of the public who are attending online and wish to speak this evening. Please raise your hand electronically, and when called upon, state your name and spell your surname for the record, and provide your home address prior to your presentation. Okay, I'll now pass it over. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, okay. And so Liz, you're first up, please. If you would state your name, spell it, and your address, please.
Okay, it's Liz Hessels, and it's L-I-Z. Last name is H-E-S-S-E-L-S. And we live at 43272 Pettit Road, Waynflete, Ontario.
Okay, thank you. And you may go ahead.
Well, Sarah's basically covered most of the stuff because she's been handling it for us. I just wanted to let you know I was here to listen to what you guys were saying, and I would like to have a report back when you're done. So.
Okay. So any other people wish to speak to this from the public? I don't see anyone else's hands raised. Okay, so now pass it back to our planner to speak to the next step.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the next step is a planning report regarding a complete review of the proposed amendment and a bylaw, which will be brought forward by staff at a later date. So any member of the public that is watching this evening, if they want to provide written comments, they can contact me after this meeting. So if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting and or make written submissions to the township regarding the proposed amendment before council gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hessels, if you could also go on mute just to, thank you. If you wish to be notified of the passing of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or the refusal of the request to amend the zoning bylaw, you must make a written request to the deputy clerk here at the Township of Wainfleet. Okay, so that concludes the final public meeting. So we'll now move into the agenda, into the delegations section of the agenda. And we have two delegations scheduled to speak this evening. The first one is Matt Robinson, Director, GO Implementation, Niagara Region, Regional Transit System Governance Study. And Niagara Region has submitted a delegation to make a presentation respecting the Regional Transit System Governance Study. The delegation has requested 15 minutes to make the presentation and is seeking council support in principle of the proposed governance model as outlined in the motion contained on page 79 of the agenda package. I'll now call upon Matt Robinson to make his presentation to council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council. I'll try and screen share here. There we go. Okay. Everybody see that? Everything good?
Looks good.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Matt Robinson, and I am the Director of the GO Implementation Office at Niagara Region, here on behalf of the Linking Niagara Transit Committee. Tonight, Council will hear about the next steps in the exciting, purposeful transition toward a consolidated transit system in Niagara. Tonight is about consultation. This is Council's chance to provide the project team with feedback and ask any questions. I ask Council's indulgence as I present tonight. My presentation, as the Mayor indicated, is about 15 minutes long. With me are Scott Fraser and Heather Talbot from the region, as well as our governance study consultant teams from Optimus SBR and Left Turn Right Turn. Before I get started, I wanted to thank Mayor Gibson for his support for transit at Regional Council and recognize the work of Richard Nand, who is an active member of our transit working group, both of whom have worked hard to get NRT on-demand service here in Waynflete. Tonight, we will examine where we've been and why we're here, the governance study's objectives and highlights, and examine the benefits of a consolidated system, and then discuss next steps. I wanted to start with a quick snapshot of current transit usage in Waynflete. Waynflete is currently served by Niagara Specialized Transit and Niagara Region Transit on Demand. NST has been operating for over 30 years, delivering intermunicipal trips to mobility challenged passengers in your community. In 2019, 350 trips were taken by Waynflete residents on NST and 280 trips in 2020, despite the pandemic challenged year. NRT On Demand launched recently in September 2020, connecting Waynflete residents with access to on-demand transit who are now able to take trips anywhere outside the township, providing direct or indirect access to all 11 other municipalities. Over 100 trips have been taken in Waynflete since the service launched, providing 15-minute wait time access to transit right at your doorstep. It's clear transit has been embraced by the residents of Waynflete. When I was last here in 2017, we sought authority for the region to operate transit. Triple majority was achieved, as well as endorsement in principle to move forward with this transit consolidation. Tonight is about advancing the next chapter in that story. That 2017 unanimous triple majority process also established the Linking Niagara Transit Committee. Its mandate is to review transit region-wide, focusing on operational integration and developing this governance model. Tonight is about consultation. We want to hear your feedback. We want to know what you think, how we can improve the model to make it work for the township. So let's start with why integrate transit in Niagara? Well, it allows your community to better connect riders more seamlessly and allows for increased equity by breaking down social and economic barriers, making communities across Niagara connected in ways that improve on our residents' social determinants of health. Integrating transit service enhances our growth and economic development opportunities. Economic development professionals regularly attest to how important our region's seamless and connected transportation system is as a backbone for residents and businesses seeking new communities to call home. Likewise, employers attest to the need for a connected and seamless system that enables their business and employees to access skills and opportunities both to and from the GTHA. The same goes for both in and around Niagara as well. Accessibility is a key feature to a seamless system. as in access to transit, those underserved or unserved by transit in their communities, as residents in Waynflete have been up until this past summer. With Waynflete now connected to NRT On Demand, youth retention is strengthened. Lastly, integrated transit supports sustainability. It contributes to a greener economy and enables a shift to greater transit use and less vehicles on the road. So why do it now? COVID-19 has had a dramatic impact on transit across the world. Most systems have ridership numbers that are a small fraction of the pre-pandemic numbers. The federal government indicates 3 to 5 years for transit to recover to pre-pandemic levels. The Intermunicipal Transit Working Group has been meeting weekly since the pandemic was declared. With 11 separate systems operating in Niagara, we had to, for the residents and riders we serve. Consolidating now allows us to maximize our resources at a time when resources are even more precious and transit is significantly reduced. Overall, it would allow us to create a maximized system that fully leverages the resources we've collectively invested to make our transit system even better. Integrating now also allows us to create a seamless, specialized, and conventional system, one that serves to create unity, equity, and seamless transit for all users, no matter their mobility needs. Transition to a larger system ensures faster, more targeted investments are made to smaller communities like Waynflete, where expansion to underserved or unserved areas and maximization of on-demand services are proving to be very effective, viable deployments seeing explosive growth. And lastly, consolidating now allows for a seamless integration with the GO network, whether integration with Presto or new direct connections to GO stations or expansion to places like Fort Erie. This exponentially is more effective under a single transit system. So with the stage set on what the transit footprint in Waynflete is now, how we got this far on governance, why we're here tonight, let's examine the highlights of the study itself. Over the course of 2020, under the guidance of the Area CAO Working Group, the consultants undertook developing a new governance model. The governance study used a 5-step process that started with a full review of the current state of transit in Niagara, who has what, how they operate it, how much they invest. They did a full jurisdictional scan of peer regions from across Ontario, including Edmonton, Alberta, which together served as the baseline for analysis. LNTC also wanted to see what Niagara's transit could aspire to be. What could a fully integrated transit model in Niagara deliver in terms of ridership, and what would it take to get us there? This is the future state model. From there, models were identified, compared, and graded against a matrix of factors, landing on a final recommendation. With a recommended model, the study plotted a blueprint for Niagara to transition effectively each step of the way to achieve this in a 24-month period. The study concluded that the full commission model is the most effective for Niagara, bringing the right balance of autonomy and flexibility to drive growth and transit innovation. The full commission was determined to be best able to meet Niagara's changing needs and create an enhanced system that would provide transit equity to our 12 municipalities. The key benefits of the commission were its autonomy and financial flexibility. Through a commission, Niagara's transit system could grow with an exclusive focus on transit. With a board and staff devoted to innovative and responsive transit growth, Niagara's communities will realize their full transit potential. The commission will be able to respond to trends in the industry and better adapt to pressures. The commission also stacks up as being the most cost-efficient system. This is well documented across Ontario, with separate transit entities routinely providing a less expensive cost per trip than other transit models. The commission, or more legally referred to as a municipal services board, is recommended to have a 9-member board with 5 voting members from regional council and 4 skills-based members of the public. These public members would serve at large and bring value-added industry skills to the board's decision-making. In support of the board, an advisory committee will be established with 1 representative from each of the 12 municipalities. It would report to the commission as a way for frontline users to interface with the board and provide representation from the community on things such as the transit system's growth, focus areas, customer needs, and community interests. A 5-step plan was developed to take the process from approval through to a fully in-service environment, including the selection of the board, consolidation of staff, assets, and services, through to service launch. This process, from start through to service transfer to the new entity, is mapped out in a significant detail in the transition plan, with the proposed opening day of the new commission, September 2022. So we're here in Waynflete. How does this transit consolidation benefit and impact the residents of your community? First, a bit of visioning, a bit of that imagine if. So imagine a transit system where a single fare can get you to any municipality in Niagara. Your phone serves as both your transit pass and your payment technology. There's one transit brand on every bus. It's easily numbered. Your kids catch rides from your home on Mill Race Road to the movie theater in Welland. You take transit to your job at Standpack in West Lincoln. You can grab pizza from Pazzo's, swing by the LCBO, go with mom to her medical appointment at the St. Catharines Hospital, catch a ride to a Jays game from the Grimsby GO station, or jump on an HSR bus to go see family in Winona. Youth and seniors traveling for employment, medical appointments, or to Brock University, all using transit. So what does this mean in terms of tangibles? Well, arguably NRT On Demand is the biggest in your community. The early ridership numbers are fantastic, despite the pandemic. At over 100 rides this early on, it's clear your residents have a need for transit. But let's not forget, that's only intermunicipal trips. Under a consolidated model, in-town and out-of-town trips would be consistent across rural municipalities. Enhanced service is one of the key benefits. I refer to this as transit equity. This means Waynflete residents can get anywhere they want using transit, local and intermunicipal trips, so you can get to the bank here in town, Sobeys in Port Colborne, or the Meridian Center for the Ice Dogs game. Service is operating 7 days a week, later on the weekends and holidays. This will happen early on in transition, as these service enhancements would be front-loaded, so smaller municipalities realize these system benefits faster and longer. Imagine a system where our smaller urban and rural municipalities are fully served by on-demand transit, fueling and feeding the larger municipalities who have the densities needed for conventional systems, making getting to big city amenities, employment, and education much more seamless and readily available. So to deliver on all of these benefits requires a financial strategy. This approach has been developed in consultation with area CAOs and treasurers. The financial strategy supports and makes possible the consolidation of the transit system overall so that we can realize all of the benefits that I've mentioned. It includes funding for immediate transit service expansion and enhancement, specifically for our smaller municipalities who see improvements faster. It also allows all municipalities to leverage the investments that have been made across the region, avoiding duplication and ultimately savings. And the consolidation of provincial gas tax funds allows economies of scale that cannot be realized in smaller systems. Simply put, the financial model will see the upload to a single regional levy for transit. Municipal levies will no longer pay for transit. The upload duration is varied by municipality. Smaller municipalities go more quickly, larger ones over a longer period of time. And existing service levels in the larger municipalities will go no lower than their 2021 levels. The new transit levy would start with funding transition costs via the regional levy. It ramps up as the existing municipal transit levies are transferred to the region. Waynflete and West Lincoln don't have a municipal levy. Throughout that upload, funding is being reinvested for expansion to municipalities like Waynflete via the regional levy. With regard to assets, the CAO working group has endorsed the Cummings principle to address the future transfer of assets from area municipalities in the region up to the new commission. Under this scenario, capital assets will be transferred to the new commission. By utilizing the Cummings principle, asset transfers occur fairly, equitably, and transparently. It's also been established through judicial precedent over 40 years and has guided every other transit consolidation over that period. As I mentioned before, the financial strategy is based on the transfer of current municipal transit levies across Niagara to a single regional levy by 2027. Specifically for Waynflete, where the current delivery of transit in your community through NRT On Demand is funded solely through the regional levy, there's no municipal levy, this will continue to be the case. All additional opportunities for growth and enhancement of transit services will be realized through the short-term transition funding that's specifically targeted for smaller municipalities. As the new commission is established and Niagara's transit system and ridership start to grow, there are a number of ways to mitigate future financial pressures and enable tax levy offsets. Support from our provincial and federal partners, population and assessment growth, and new business development, including associated future DCs, all with aim to ensuring future system growth is offset by other funding mechanisms wherever possible. So we've heard the benefits of integrating transit, how it can be achieved now, what we can achieve together, what the commission looks like, how long it will take to get us there, and how the community benefits. So what comes next? In summary, the full commission has been found best suited for Niagara, funded through a single regional levy upload over 5 years, providing protection for existing service hours, assets, and people where they exist. We believe there's immense value for Waynflete in the future of transit expansion in your community. Tonight, your clerk has prepared a package with a draft motion for council to consider. This motion is non-binding, intended to get support in principle for the consolidation and its principles, just like we did in 2017. Your feedback tonight help makes the model better. That is what we are here for. We're listening and we're hopeful that we can accommodate all of your feedback to make the model one that all of Niagara, including your residents here in Waynflete, can be proud to embrace. This roadshow period we're in, we'll have the project team doing these presentations across all 13 councils by February 28th. We will take in all of the feedback received. We'll identify, theme, incorporate, and address what we've heard, just like an environmental assessment, and bring back a final report for you to vote on formally in the summer as part of the triple majority approval process. If the process and timeline progress as planned, by September 2022, Niagara would have a new single transit commission in place. So with that, I thank you, council, for your indulgence and your attention. We're passionate about this and hope to hear and address any questions you might have, take away any solutions you might suggest, and welcome the chance to hear your insights. With that, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your time and the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. So we're going to go right into discussion by council. If we can go full screen here, please. Thank you. And I look for questions and comments by our councillors on this presentation and the future of transit in Niagara and Waynflete. I'm sure there must be somebody who's interested in asking questions. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So when I read this, I see that the Township of Wainfleet, I think it's by 2027, 28 and 29, we're a little over $500,000 plus another $100,000 for the operation of the administration. So we're $600,000. That's going to bankrupt this town. Just plain and simple, sir. We have under $6 million budget. We can't afford that. We are in a zero growth. The region doesn't want to let us grow. Province doesn't want to let us grow. We can't afford this. If we vote for this tonight, we're telling our town we're bankrupt inside of 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Point taken. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, so not seeing any other hands up. It is true that I did support this at the region. It made a lot of sense, but never did I make sense for Waynflete. It makes sense for Niagara Falls. It makes sense for Welland and St. Catharines and Grimsby to all be interconnected and working on a transit system. I agree with that, and that's where my vote came on that. When I look at it here for Waynflete, it does not work for us, Matt. We're a car-driven, no pun intended, but if we go anywhere, we have to get in our car. Even if there was transit hubbed in, say, Waynflete, chances are I have to get in my car, drive 15 kilometers to get to Waynflete to get on the bus to go to Welland, when I can just drive, 18 kilometers and go to Welland. or a lot of our people go to Dunnville or Smithville. The car is an integral part. I think when you move to the country, like in Waynfleet, you automatically know you're driving places. I look at this as well, and I see perhaps that it may be something that is functional for Waynfleet 20, 30 years down the road when our population has grown, Niagara region has changed. I see it for that. To Councillor McClellan's point, and that was one of the key points I looked at here. Starting in 2023, our share is 81,000, and it ramps up every year to $506,000 by 2029. This is true. This is money that we cannot afford. We're still trying to build a basic core infrastructure fire station, and we're not, as Councillor McClellan stated, we're not getting any assistance with that either. So we need to focus Waynfleet on things that we do need to achieve. This is a great concept, but not for now, in my mind. It is good for, in the future, maybe 30, 40 years from now. So those are my comments. I don't know if that has sparked any other councillors who wish to speak to this, but we would be absolutely, disrespecting our taxpayers by supporting this, in my opinion. So I look to anybody else. Councillor Van Vliet.
I want to thank you for the presentation, Matt. It's really good. I've lived here almost my whole life, and what the mayor said, you have to drive to get anywhere. For somebody who's living wherever, it could take you 15 minutes to get to a pickup point. So for me, living in Waynflete, it's kind of a rite of passage to have a car, because you have to drive to school in most sense, or wait for 2 or 3 hours for a bus at night. So, I mean, it looks good on paper, but it just wouldn't work for us. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Vliet. And yes, it's a great presentation, Matt. I see it for the future, but I don't see it for now. Councillor Cridlin, you had your hand up.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And again, thank the presenter for coming to Waynflete. I guess one of the questions I have is, are we your first group that you're presenting to, or have you already presented to West Lincoln? I'd be interested in any feedback you've heard so far from West Lincoln if you've been there.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we were actually just there last night and heard very similar thoughts as we're hearing here in Waynflete tonight. And I think it's valuable feedback for us as a project team to understand the positions of small rural municipalities, because as you well know, there's a large, from St. Catharines to Waynflete and everywhere in between, there's a large pendulum swing in terms of population, density, and transit use. I did want to take this opportunity to respond to a couple of the comments around the type of transit service. I'm not sure if council's aware, but NRT On Demand, which has been in service in your township since September of last year, provides door-to-door on demand, 15 minutes. I go on my app or I make a phone call, it shows up, transit shows up at your doorstep, takes you anywhere you want to go in West Niagara, Pelham, Lincoln, Grimsby, West Lincoln, St. Catharines, Wellingport, Colborne. It will take you wherever you want to go. So the proposal that's on the table, though, to consolidate all of transit, the transit service in Waynflete will continue to be on demand. So I don't want to leave the impression that these are a bus that's sort of, running through town and you have to go 15 minutes, drive your car to the bus stop. The on-demand transit that exists now, you can hail on-demand transit from your phone, from your couch. 15 minutes later, it's at your driveway and will take you anywhere you want to go for $6. That's the current transit deployment in Waynflete. And I don't want to leave council with the impression that there's something different or bigger in the future that includes sort of 40-foot buses like you see in Welland, St. Catharines, or Niagara Falls. So I apologize, Councillor Cridlin. I couldn't resist trying to at least correct what some of the transit offerings look like both now and into the future.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Matt. You gave a great presentation. But in Waynflete, if you live on the southeast end along the lakeshore somewhere, and you want to get to our northwest end, it'll take you 25 minutes, and our speed limit is 80 kilometers. You can fly, and it takes you that long to get there. Now, that's a great thing that we get a private car or Uber to come and pick you up, but it's still going to cost us $500,000 to do it that we don't have, and our people can't afford. They all have. I'd be hard pressed to tell you there's many people in town that have one car in their driveway. Most of them have two. I don't see it working. I agree with the mayor. This is something if 25 years from now, the province and the farmers give up farming and we find a new way to get food and we turn around and make this a big, huge subdivision, by God, I say, yes, we got to bring it in. But the way this town sits right now, I don't see it happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McClung. I wonder, Mr. Robinson, is there any way that the proposal can be reworked that would benefit the smaller communities of Niagara in some way? I mean, the cost is prohibitive. That it's just a non-starter right off the bat due to the cost. And secondly, as I say, we have other core infrastructure that requires to be built. Is there, I'm sure, and if you heard the same thing with West Lincoln last night, virtually somewhat the same, there must be some other municipalities that may say, look, great idea, but not now. Is there anything that you can do to rework this to come back to make it more palatable for a Waynflete resident?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the opportunity because I think that's a great question and one that's constructive in looking at, we like the idea of moving to consolidation, but we recognize that it may be cost prohibitive for the Township of Wainfleet. I think that's feedback that the project team takes away from this to look at whether it's alternative funding models. Those are the types of things that have either been directed by regional councillor, I'm thinking of Councillor Zalepa, Mayor Gibson, who was looking from Niagara on the Lake. Is there alternative financial models that exist? That's the kind of feedback that we're looking for as a project team that says, yes, you know what, in principle, moving to a consolidated system is something Niagara should aspire to. It's something we're looking for. But the financial model, as it impacts the current Township of Wainfleet, we need to look at alternatives as to how to make that work for us as a township. That's the kind of feedback that we're looking for and can take away based on some of the comments that we've heard here tonight. I also wanted to be clear with council as well that I'm not going to parse out a taxpayer is a taxpayer, and I'm not looking to parse those out. But I do want to be clear that going forward, it's the regional levy where the costs of expanding transit will fall. So I recognize that falls to the same taxpayer, but I just wanted to be clear that that's not to the township's budget in any way, shape, or form. That does move entirely to the regional budget.
Yeah, it's the old saying, Mr. Robinson, there is only one taxpayer, and whether it goes through your pockets first or our pockets, it doesn't matter. $500,000 to Waynflete taxpayers, it would be absolutely irresponsible, I believe, on my opinion, to support this with those kinds of dollars in place. So I'd love for you to go back to the drawing board and come up with something that would be, actually affordable for a small municipality like us. But at this time, we just couldn't support it, in my opinion. Councillor Cridlin, you had your hand up.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And again, agreeing with all your points, all the points that are being made. I would just go back to one of the slides, maybe Matt, that you've got some assumptions near the end about our growth, about where we might get funding from. I would say all those three assumptions kind of don't really fly. So maybe West Lincoln has actually got a bit of growth that they can look at for a shorter timeline or a different kind of financial model. But I'm with all my councillors here on this. The affordability aspect is a no-go. So thank you again for the presentation and all the extras that you brought. I was really quite happy to hear that we knew about the number of trips taken in Waynflete. So it was great to have that level of detail in your presentation tonight.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion? I think our position seems to be clear. I guess we could simply, there's a fairly lengthy motion here. I don't see any point to read that this evening. If you want to move just receiving the report, we could do that, or we could not even receive it, whatever you want to do. It's up to council. If we just receive it, but we don't support any other aspect of it, I think that's fairly reflective of what I'm sensing tonight. So anybody wish to make that motion? Councillor Gilmore?
They're asking for a motion to support it in principle, and I think we need to vote on that.
Well, if we don't receive the report even, then we don't have to vote on that. And there's no obligation for us to receive the report.
Okay, but we've already received it, so that's a bit of a formality. So, I mean, we've received the report, so we can't not receive something that we've got. We need to vote on we need to make a statement one way or another on the motion that's requesting support in principle, so that it's on the record and they know where we stand. Okay,
so we can technically not receive it, but I actually research that ahead of time. But we will receive it. A motion to receive it, and a motion to not support the motion that's written out on page 79 of the report. So that is the motion. Can we have a Councillor McCullough?
Yeah, I would definitely, so we have to receive it. I want it known that we want no part of this, so we can vote against it. But I mean, there should be a clear statement. We want no part of this, the way it's set up right now.
Okay, Meredith, is that motion as I stated it adequate?
Through Mr. Mayor to all council. So, Mr. Mayor, I would read the entire motion that was provided on page 79 and see if we can get a mover and seconder to put that on the floor, and discussion can stem from that, whether you want to approve or not.
Okay, it's a long page here, so bear with me. Whereas the full commission model is described in Appendix 2 to report LNTC C4 2020 and to be established as a municipal services board of the region in accordance with Municipal Act 2001 has been recommended as a preferred governance model for the consolidation of Niagara's public transit system. And whereas the Cummings principle enacted through a series of municipal transfer agreements will be used to guide the transfer, use of, and access to assets and facilities from existing local area municipalities to the Commission. And whereas all existing employees, vendors, contracts, and collective bargaining agreements will be transferred to or assumed by the Commission in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001 or Labor Relations Act 1995. And whereas a minimum of 2021 transit service hours in local area municipalities will be maintained for a period of 5 years from the assumption of delivery of service by the Commission, unless otherwise agreed to by the local area municipality. And whereas all existing and incremental transit spending will be transferred to the new Commission funding through a single regional tax levy to be enacted over a transfer implementation period of 5 fiscal years as described in report LNTC C4 2020. And whereas to achieve a net neutral impact to the regional taxpayer, local transit costs assumed by the regional tax levy will be offset by equivalent budgetary reductions by the local area municipality. And whereas funding previously committed under intergovernmental programs such as the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program will be maintained and used within the receiving municipality. And whereas support will be sought from senior levels of government for the one-time transition costs associated with consolidation under programs such as the provincial government's Safe Restart Agreement. And whereas an integrated single regional fare will be established by the Commission within 5 years of the assumption of delivery of service by the Commission. Be it resolved that Council endorse in principle the full Commission as the recommended governance model for the consolidation of Niagara's public transit system. That is the end of that motion. We have a mover and a seconder for it. To put it on the floor, please. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor McClellan. Is there any Further discussion? Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, I would like it made known, if we're not part of it, we don't want to pay any regional taxes on this either, because I don't want somebody to say it to region, well, we don't have to service them, but we're going to raise their taxes. The region, no, we can't pay anything for it.
Okay. Are there any other further comments before we vote? Excuse me. Okay, seeing no further comments on this motion, I'll record a vote. All in favor or opposed? Councillor McClellan.
Opposed.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Opposed.
Councillor Cridland.
Opposed.
Councillor Gilmore.
Opposed.
And I am opposed. The motion is defeated. No further discussion. And that's defeated. Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson, for your presentation. And we'll move on to our next presentation now. We move to Dr. Gervin Fearon and Dr. Lynn Wells, Brock University update and discussion. Dr. Fearon and Dr. Wells have submitted a delegation to provide an update on Brock University and discuss areas of potential partnership. I will now call upon Dr. Fearon and Dr. Wells to present to council. You have 10 minutes. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor, for welcoming us, as well as for Council for welcoming us as well. We're very pleased to have these moments to be able to outline some of the developments taking place at Brock University, particularly some of our strategic priorities and direction, as well as our priority to be a key contributor across the region. With that as well, we'll also be talking about the response that we've done to COVID-19, as well as our participation in the recovery efforts of the entire region. So I'm Gervin Fearon, President of Brock University. I'm also joined by our Provost, Dr. Lynn Wells, and we'll be sharing the stage in terms of making this presentation. On this first slide that you see before you is a recognition that Brock University has a very unique history. And we are a university that has been really started, developed, and nurtured by the community. Individuals made contributions to the start of the university, and indeed the Allenberg Women's Institute was a key catalyst for the establishment of the university just before the 1960s. By 1964, university was formed, and in some respects, we started off with very humble means. We started in a church basement, then moved to a refrigerator factory, and now you see before you a university that's developed and become a key contributor to regional economic activity and economic growth as well. So we're really pleased with that basis that we're linked directly to community, and part of the presentation today is being able to make sure that we maintain those relationships with communities right across the Niagara region. Well, today, as you can see, we have grown from those humble starts. We now have over 19,000 students, 6,000 employees, and that makes us the second largest employer across the Niagara region. As a result, as we've been impacted by COVID-19, we've been very thoughtful about the kinds of decisions that we make, because those decisions will, of course, have a significant implications to the entire region. Moving to the next slide, what you can also see is some of the economic implications of Brock University. Our budget each year is over around $360 million, so over $300 million. And as a result, we have a significant economic footprint. The economic footprint can be measured in a number of ways. In terms of our direct impact on the Niagara region, it's around $450 million in terms of economic spill. And then when we think at a provincial level, it's over $640 million. One of the things to note is that our employees live right across the entire region. We have a personnel or payroll of $212 million. And consequently, no doubt that some of our employees live within Waynflete and consequently are contributing to your tax base and to the vitality of your township. We're very proud about that, and we're very proud about the impact that we have right across the entire region as well. When we move to the next slide, what you'll also note is the kind of priorities that we have at the university. And with that, I think I'll turn to our provost, who is effectively our chief academic officer at the university, and she'll take you through some of the priorities at the university. So over to Dr. Wells.
Great. Thank you, President Farron. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. Brock University is guided by our institutional strategic plan, which was approved in 2018 and runs for 7 years until 2025. And as you'll see, we have 4 key priorities. They're all important and they all reinforce one another. First, of course, is providing an excellent university experience for our students. Secondly is building our research capacity to serve our local communities. Everything we do, of course, is connected to the vitality of the region, as the president said. And finally, we place a strong value on fostering a culture of inclusivity, accessibility, reconciliation, and decolonization. So if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. One fine example of the way that Brock University supports local industry is through our Cool Climate Enology and Viticulture Institute, which supports the local wine and grape growers industry. And this creates some of that major impact on the local economy that President Farron spoke of. So for instance, in the 2014-15 economic impact study, it was found that Covet contributed $58 million to the local industry and $91 million to the Ontario economy. This is just one of the examples of the ways that Brock really does have a strong impact on the region and on its prosperity. Turn to the next slide, please. Thank you. Before COVID came and interrupted a lot of our activities, we had just opened a new facility called the Brock Link that's really designed to support local innovation, startup industries, small and medium enterprises, and helping them develop their capacity around research, commercialization, entrepreneurship. It gives small industries access to cutting edge technology. It really helps them get up and going. And our research shows that 80% of those startups do remain in the local community and help to contribute to the economic prosperity of the region. Similarly, our new Validating, Prototyping, and Manufacturing Institute is designed to help industries such as bioscience, bioagriculture, and so on to scale up and commercialize their industries. And these are just some of the ways that we really reach out to local industries to make sure that they're thriving and benefiting from everything that Brock has to offer. Right now, we're in the process of a very exciting new project, which is the development of a new engineering program. We're hoping to have that up and running in the next couple of years. And our engineering program is designed to work very closely with local industry through student placements and through career development of our students so that they can move directly into industry jobs in the Niagara region. In addition, we're also building our capacity in continuing education to provide upskilling and reskilling opportunities for people who might have been displaced during the pandemic who are looking for new career opportunities. So we're opening our doors to more part-time education and professional development for Niagara residents. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. A lot of our work is supported by the work of our Government and Community Relations Office. We have Jane Crawley with us this evening from that office. And that team has created a really wonderful community engagement plan that's meant to reach out to our community partners to make sure that we're responsive to the needs of local community organizations and that we're accountable to them in the work that we do. And at the end of the presentation, we'll provide information about how to make contact with that office if you would like to get in contact about any initiatives that you might have. Thank you. Move to the next slide. Back to you, President Fearon.
Thank you very much. As was just made mention, one of the things that we're particularly proud about is our impact on communities and the way that we work and engage across the entire region. One of the significant examples of that is what we do through the Brock Niagara Center for Health and Well-Being. At that center, individuals from a wide range of abilities, but particularly individuals who are 50 plus or so, access and have access to a substantial amount of equipment, and individuals, both our faculty and students, who work with very personalized healthcare and fitness training regimes that support their health and well-being. Additionally, when we think about some of the additional activities that we do at the university, we spoke about already the economic footprint that we have, but as well, we also think of some of the social and environmental partnerships that we've established. All of that activity comes together to be able to contribute not only to the economic vitality, but as well to the quality of life that we all enjoy across the Niagara region. I can tell you that for myself, I get on my bicycle a fair bit, and it's always a pleasure as I'm riding from one side at Lake Ontario all the way down to Lake Erie, and being able to pass through Waynflete and being able to see how the linkages and the relationships go right across the communities across the region. And that part is a part of the appeal. And in that, the university does look towards being a contributor and a partner in the kind of quality experience that we all enjoy living here in Niagara. Well, as you'll note, recently we formed a number of new partnerships. We formed a new partnership with the Port Authority, and that's part of their efforts to be able to have a stronger footprint in the Niagara region, but as well to be able to support the kinds of activities and engagement with our faculty, staff, and students. And as the Provost has just made mention, we have a number of priority initiatives, both in engineering and continuing education, that we think will be very important to the region. Next. We know that we've all been impacted by COVID-19, and at the university, there's been significant implications for us as well. But we also took the opportunity to make a contribution, not only in terms of developing a number of initiatives to have PPE, so masks, for example. We made donations of some of our equipment as well to care providers across the region. Our researchers have also started to take a look at how we can contribute to the knowledge in terms of research as it relates to COVID-19. We have a level 3 lab at the university, and consequently we can do significant research in terms of both vaccine and in terms of gaining more knowledge about COVID-19. Similarly, we've also been doing a number of studies on the social economic impact of COVID-19 on individuals, not only in the region, but across Canada in that regard. Why don't we move to the next? One of the mentions that was stated very early is part of the reason why we wanted to make this presentation to Council is that we want to make sure that we communicated that the doors of Brock University is open to you. We're open for partnerships. We're open to work on studies and on issues that's important to you. And in that regard, as you can see in terms of the information provided there, do note through our government and community relations team that you can always reach the university. And if there are issues that you believe would be of value to you, whether it's our students, our faculty, the university of a whole, working on in support of some of your priorities, then do note that that's exactly what we wish to be: an asset to the region, an asset to the community, and an asset to your township. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Fearon and Dr. Wells. Excellent presentation, and we thank you very much for it. Are there any discussion questions from our council members? Seeing none, no discussion. We have a motion then to receive this report. Okay, moved by Councillor McCollum, second. Councillor Gilmore. And any discussion? Okay, I'll just make a comment, Dr. Firon. We still have to go to see that robotic milker that we talked about when you and I met a year and a half ago. And so we have to set that up yet. Very interesting. So, Councillor McClellan?
I think Councillor Crinlin was up first, so we'll let her go.
Sorry. Don, you've got to raise your hand higher because we're only seeing from here up. So, okay, good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you again, thank you for the presentation. And maybe just a little bit of a comment on if your partnerships maybe recently with other smaller communities in the region, perhaps. It sounds like obviously you've got support for our community at large, but maybe if you've got any small bits of information about how you're working with other municipalities or how you've done so recently, that would maybe be helpful or interesting. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Firon.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. One of the examples that we've done is working with Lincoln, for example. And in that case, what we did was to ask what might be some of their priorities. And as well, we provided a student that worked on a project for them. It was a transportation project, as well as an environmental project. That student then worked out a transportation plan for them, another initiative that started with Lincoln multiplied out to becoming a broad environmental initiative on Niagara impacts that works on climate change and its impact across the region, working with 7 municipalities. So in that regard, that's an example of you as a council and as a township establishing a priority, and we then try to match our students and our faculty to be able to assist on those kinds of initiatives. So in that regard, there are no projects that are too small and no ideas that we wouldn't want to sit down with you and have a discussion on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McClellan?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. My question was, I know you mentioned that you've worked with the wineries and all that. They seem to have taken off in spades. Just wondering, is there anything that anybody at Brocket's worked with some of our cash crop farmers, if there's something that you could work with them that maybe they'd get higher productions or better productions, or is that something that might come about? Or is that a possibility?
So the answer is absolutely, and as the mayor referred to when we were talking about the dairy industry, it might be helpful for the council to know that I worked for 10 years with the Ministry of Agriculture. I got 2 agricultural degrees from Guelph, and I used to work on a cash crop farm as well. So your question is very dear directly to me, and we have a number of faculty members and students who are particularly interested in working with the agricultural sector at a broad level, not just the grape and wine industry. And I believe there would be some strong interest. And what I might mention is ask our provost, Dr. Wells, to maybe make some additional comments. But we can take this away and bring this to our faculty and students, particularly to see if we've got some individuals who would want to work with you on that. So to Dr. Wells.
Great. Thank you, President Firon. And yes, Councillor, we'd be happy to work on that project. I don't know if you noted down Jane's email there at the end of the presentation, but if you send her some ideas about how we might be helpful, she has a great network, as the President says, of our researchers who will work in agricultural areas, and also students who might be able to assist with projects as part of their experiential learning. So very happy to hear from you if you'd like to send something along.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? The motion is on the floor to receive this report. Thank you very much again to both our presenters. Excellent report, excellent presentation. So in favor or opposed to receiving the report? Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Cridley.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And I am in favor. So thank you very much. Excellent report. We'll keep you in mind. I know we have a very fledgling hops farmer here in Waynflete that we may want to make reference to. Be great to get that going. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're moving on now into staff reports. Does anybody need a recess for 5 minutes? We're all good. Okay, we'll go. We'll move into the COVID impact report, and I'll look to our CAO to speak to that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I will try to keep this brief, as we did actually meet as recently as last Tuesday to discuss some of the potential impacts of COVID-19 and the sort of evolving status of the province and Canada in general with respect to the pandemic. Again, currently, as of January 12th, the province of Ontario has declared a second state of emergency, and effective January 14th, it implemented a province-wide stay-at-home order to help stop the spread. That stay-at-home order at the time was advised that it would continue until at least February 11th. And as of today, that appears to remain the case. There were some announcements that were issued yesterday by the province about extending the state of emergency by a further 2-week period. And really what that has the effect of doing is extending the declared emergency as we understand it, but not necessarily impacting the current stay-at-home status that is in place until the 11th. Again, there were some conflicting reports the other day, but as best as we understand it, that's where we stand right now. With that in mind, council did meet last week to deal with that February 11th stay-at-home order and the associated lockdown or prohibition, really, of the use of the arena during the stay-at-home period. At the time, we sort of reviewed the cost implications of continuing to operate the arena, and we did get some direction from council last week that in the event that the stay-at-home order continues beyond the 11th, or if the arena is prevented from being used for public purposes beyond the 11th, that the mayor and the CAO were authorized to look at removing the ice surface as a cost containment measure at that time. Of course, once the ice is removed for the season, that does end the ice season for the year, at least until next fall. So we will try to avoid that where we can, but in the event that the prohibition on the arena use continues, we will seriously be looking at taking that action. Moving on from there, vaccine distribution is the sort of next big topic item. We are currently, Niagara has started to receive its vaccine, and it is currently progressing in expanding as supplies become available. The extension of vaccinations from the critical support workers to other high intensity needs, such as nursing homes and old age homes, and then moving from there to the broader general public. And the entire process for that has been outlined by the province in the sort of vaccination outline. I think that pretty well sums up the report at this time. If anyone has any questions, we'll certainly try to address them or get the information for you for a future meeting.
Okay, then we have a motion to receive COVID-19 impact report, moved by Councillor McClellan, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none.
No. Donna's got her hand up.
Oh, there. Sorry, Donna. I keep missing. I apologize.
No, It's quite all right. We're all managing. Thank you, Mayor, through you. Just a quick question. Something that I actually heard at the Roma meeting was how are we doing on permits? So I understand, people might still be wanting to do permitting, and are we okay on our staff front for meeting the permit, capacity? So we haven't heard that there's a concern, but I just want to make sure we're okay there. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when you say permits, I presume you are referring to, for example, building permits, as well as other permits that we may issue for various other purposes, such as burn permits and other sort of municipal type functions. And I guess the answer is that early on in the pandemic process, we actually moved to implement a number of new electronic measures to allow people to file their permits electronically and online, so that even when you're staying at home in accordance with the provincial order, or the building is closed to the general public because of lockdown and sort of other efforts to restrict the spread of COVID, people are still able to access municipal services at the Township of Wainfleet through those electronic means. They can also contact us. Again, we are operating fully from a administrative perspective, so they can contact us by telephone, deal with us through various variety of other remote communications means. And in those extreme situations where none of those other options are available or workable, we will still do some face-to-face stuff using appropriate COVID protocols. But again, we're trying to avoid that where we can, but we are proceeding with all the other functions as we speak.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, motions on the floor. Take the vote to oppose or receive the report. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
Favor.
And I'm in favor. That report is received. We'll now move on to our bylaw enforcement staff report, BSR 001-2021, review of the Clean Yards bylaw, number 73, 2019. I think we do in fact have Mr. Tardif here, and I think he would like to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you and all of council, this report is in response from a delegation back in November regarding the changes to the Clean Yards bylaw, mostly respecting inoperative vehicles on properties. This report gives why this change was recommended and how other Niagara municipalities are handling inoperative vehicles.
Okay, that's it. Okay, so the motion is the bylaw enforcement staff report 001-2021 respecting a review of the Clean Yards bylaw be received, and that a housekeeping revision to the Township of Wainfleet Clean Yards bylaw number 73, 2019 be presented to council for ratification. We have a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor for discussion. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Thank you. And discussion, please. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, I looked at this and read what most other municipalities have. I think we need to go to one car on a lot if you're along the lakeshore or in a hamlet. I mean, if you're out on a rural property, maybe you can have two, and that includes the one on the trailer. Like, otherwise, put it in a barn, rent a barn, put it inside. We can't. You drive around and it looks like a pigsty. Whether it's my neighbor or somebody else's neighbor, we paid good money for these houses, and if that's like saying in Mr. Pewter's new subdivision, they can put two cars on the front lawn. Like, that's not right, and most municipalities don't allow that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Not sure if I agree with that everybody has the means to rent a facility to keep an extra vehicle. That's just my choice. I just don't agree with that statement. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cridlin, I'm not sure. I think, okay, your hand is up. I see it clearly. There you are.
I'll get a mitt. Thank you, Mayor, through you.
Okay, Bernie.
Bernie.
Oh, I set that up. Anyway,
You walked right into-
thank you. I did. I would, whether it's 0 or 1, I think if it was amended, the motion was added. So the housekeeping obviously is fine, but I would look at amending that to then the portion of this bylaw that does pertain to the matter that we're dealing with, whatever sections and all that we're talking about. I would just say it applies to the areas outside of a hamlet. So whether it's lakeshore or not, I don't really have a concern because they have no place to put a car, but at least with the hamlets. So whether it's 0 or 1, I do think it makes sense to separate the hamlets from all the rest on this bylaw. So that's where I would be perhaps looking for a small change.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
So the only reason I say the lakeshore is that's more densely populated than any of our hamlets. And again, you can't have this. It should be 0. I'll go with 1, but it's even at that, I'd rather see 0.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Kolasa.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and again, just for the benefit of members of the public who might be coming in, when members of council are discussing limiting the number of vehicles on a property, what we're talking about is limiting the number of inoperative vehicles. So cars that are unplated, for example, cars that are in disrepair in such a way as they cannot be operated legally for example, on a roadway that cannot be moved, cannot be operated. Those are the vehicles we're talking about. And again, we're responding to public concerns and complaints regarding that.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. And again, the history, again, staff did a great job putting that forward. We went from 0 to 2 across all of Waynflete because there was complaint. So that was the right move. I just see amending it slightly to just pull back in the hamlet. So it's the right thing to make it more rural. I get that. And, and it was the right response at the time, but we're learning that sometimes these just need to be a little bit tweaked after we get those bylaws out there and they're starting to be used. So I'll just throw that out there as well. Thank you.
Okay, Will.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the discussions that I'm hearing from council, perhaps the best thing that could happen at this stage is that the report be received as originally proposed. Rather than implementing any sort of bylaw amendment immediately, perhaps direction be given to staff to return back with a proposed amendment to address the issues that you've just raised, reducing the number of vehicles within inoperative vehicles within hamlet areas, or if I could, and we can explore this perhaps in a return report, looking at lot sizes or proximity to adjacent properties or adjacent housing, and sort of including those types of parameters in where those lots or where those inoperative vehicles can be kept.
One of the things I look at there is even how do you determine an inoperative vehicle? What may look inoperative? There's a huge definition there. I find that interesting as well. So Councillor Van Vliet had her hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The problem that was brought up in the delegation wasn't so much the vehicles, it was the noise. So I really don't think the cars were as much a problem as the noise was. So I think that was two separate issues. I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory on that.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I remember that as well. Councillor McClellan.
So the only thing is, I get, and it's the noise, but if you have more cars, you're doing more work or you're taking more parts off. besides that, it just looks like the dog's breakfast as far as I'm concerned. And our one inoperable vehicle, which is classified as one with no current registration, is how they classified it, Mr. Mayor. That includes cars that are on a trailer. So you can't go and buy 3 trailers and have 4 cars in your yard. We got to put an end to this. Enough is enough.
Okay. Any other input on this before? If it goes back to staff, and you know, right now we're a little bit torn on what we think is appropriate here. So I guess we could put it back to staff and ask them to give us a couple of options that we can debate at the next presentation from staff on this. I think that's probably the way we need to do it, because it needs to be formalized and debated. So I guess so we'll just change this motion just to receive this report, and direction to go back to staff to do some further research and provide us with some options on this at perhaps our next council meeting. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Councillor Van Vliet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, sometimes this is a hobby for people, whether or not they're working on like a derby car or they're restoring a car, and they just don't have the facility or the room to put things. Obviously, it's a wee bit of an eyesight in some places, but one man's trash is another man's treasure. So it's how you see it. So I just don't want to limit people to what they can and cannot do in their own houses or in their own yards.
Okay, point taken. Councillor McCollum, one further point.
So there's 12 municipalities. Most of them don't allow any. Yet there's car races, there's hobbyists all through it. Somehow those people that are doing it find a place to rent, a garage from a neighbor, or something that they can work on. Surely to God, our people know somebody that can do it. I know I have friends that restore cars. They rent garage from somebody else, sometimes in another town, and drive there and do their hobby and come back. It can be done. It's common courtesy not to have your house or your place looking like a used car lot.
Okay, so with that, Councillor Gilmore, we haven't heard from you. Did you have your hand up?
Well, I was just going to help you along and move that we receive the report, refer this back to staff to come back with additional restrictions surrounding the hamlet areas and any other areas they deem necessary.
Exactly where I was going. Thank you very much for that. So that is the motion now. Mover in a second. So it's moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor McClellan. Any further discussion? Okay, yay or nay? Councillor Cridland?
In favor?
Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
And Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
And I am in favor. That is passed. So we look forward to that report coming back to us with some options. Okay, moving on to drainage staff reports. Indian Creek Municipal Drain, the engineer's report. I understand that we have some members of the public who wish to address council regarding this engineer's report. So we'll now pass it over to our drainage superintendent, engineer, to speak to the project before we take comments from the public. And I look to Mr. Jemison to speak to this. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So Drainage Staff Report 2 is for the consideration of the Indian Creek Section 78 report update and to advance the Indian Creek to the Court of Revision. So property owners were notified of the meeting, and thank you to them for participating in this capacity. So moving forward, we're hoping to schedule the Court of Revision to discuss the costs and assessments. So at this point, I would like to pass it to Steve Brickman, the engineer from Dietrich Engineering, who worked on this report.
Thank you, Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Brickman.
Thank you. I'm just going to try to share my screen here. Would you mind just confirming you're seeing the slideshow? It should be an aerial image of the watershed.
Confirmed.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present this Indian Creek Municipal Drain report. I trust that the council has had an opportunity to review the report already, so I'm going to try to keep this presentation as brief as I can and really just kind of hit the main points of it. Presentation overview, I intend to talk about the introduction and how Dietrich Engineering became involved on this project, and then the history of the municipal drains within the watershed. I have a few photos and findings just to basically show council what the municipal drain looks like today. And then from there, I'm going to move into the recommended design and the estimated costs. I've added another part to the end of the presentation too, just to basically explain the process and procedure under the Drainage Act as we move forward. And then the last point, I was hoping to hold questions until the end, if that's okay with the mayor. So Dietrich Engineering was appointed by the council on March 26th, 2019, and that was under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. An on-site meeting was held on August 15th, 2019. At that meeting, we basically received information from the landowners, which basically led us to understand what the problems are with the drainage area and direct us in our survey. We completed our survey, then completed the drafting, the design, and the cost estimates and assessments, and then presented all the information at a public information meeting, which was held on October 6th, 2020. And after that meeting, we filed the report on November 27th, 2020. So that's the report that's being considered tonight. Some of the history on the Indian Creek Drain, it was originally constructed 105 years ago. October 19, 1915 was the date of the report that authorized the original construction. So it's a very, very old drain. There was a second report completed on September 15th, 1949, that's 71 years ago. And that's the report that's in effect today. There hasn't been a report since 1949. So that 1949 report is how the Indian Creek Drain is to be maintained today. This report included the entire reconstruction of the drain. It's about 2.8 kilometers. It did not include any culverts at that time. And just as a note to the council, the grade of the Indian Creek Drain was very, very, very flat, only 0.04% or a half inch per 100 feet, extremely flat. A couple of the photos that we have from our survey basically just shows what the state of the Indian Creek is right now. Generally speaking, where the surveyor is on that bank with the cornfield behind him, there is a bit more depth over there as opposed to, say, the plowed field side, where the water level isn't very much different than the actual plowed field. So in general, the drain is very shallow. It's also very, very wide and not so defined. This is an existing culvert on the David Mann property. You can see that at this time the photo was taken anyway, the water is, I think, more than half full up that culvert. On the other side of the same culvert, on the other side, you can see that the material changes partway through too. And another photo here showing the lack of definition. Basically, this drain is kind of meandering between this low area and this low area. So what we propose to do is, and again, I'm just going to kind of hit the high points of the design too. But we're proposing a little over 2 kilometers of open ditch excavation and increasing the depth, typically by about an additional 18 inches or so, in some locations of about 2 feet, but typically about 18 to 20 inches. And so about 2.1 kilometers of open ditch excavation, 4 new crossings. 3 of those new crossings are on the road. So from top, the drain flows from, in this case, from southwest to northeast. So from the top of the drain, there's a new culvert crossing on Concession 6 Road, one on Gracie, and then the other one on Henderson Road. There's also a private crossing proposed on the David Mann property. The report shows that crossing in the same location that the existing crossing is on. I'm going to come back to the David Mann crossing in just a couple slides here. There has been a little bit of a change there. The other part too is to abandon the upper portion, which is no longer in use, and then also to update the watershed of the system. So the blue dash line is the watershed boundary or the catchment area, and this watershed boundary was delineated using LiDAR, mainly anyway, LiDAR information provided from the province. And it's much, much better than the information that the engineer had in 1949. So the yellow dash line is a real approximation of what the report watershed looked like in 1949. It just wasn't as accurate. Generally speaking, it's similar, but there is quite a few differences. For instance, this area over here and across the road. Returning back to that Mann culvert, like I said, there was an adjustment. So our report currently shows the Mann culvert being at station 1+717. That is the existing location. And we propose to replace it in the same location since, well, actually talking to David Mann last week, we we found that we can make an adjustment to better accommodate his needs by moving that culvert parallel, well, right along the bush here. The same thing is true for the construction access as well off of Gracie Road. So that's an adjustment that's going to be made at the time of construction, and then that will be passed on to the township so that the township has record on how to maintain it in the future. The estimated cost of the project. I broke it down into quite a few different items, but the bottom line here at the end is the estimated cost of the entire project comes to about $249,700, and that includes allowances, construction, administration, contingencies, net HST, basically everything we can think of. The cost of that project comes to $249,700. So returning back to the presentation overview, we've worked our way through the first 4 bullets, and then going into the process and what the next steps are, basically. This is the entire process, start to finish, from the perspective of the engineer. Appointment of the engineer, on-site meeting, survey, drafting, design, everything up to preparing the final report, which is now complete. Now we move into the processing of the report. So the next slide, I broke down, there's a ton of steps that are in this area too. So I broke down that on the next slide here. I put down that this is typically a 3-month period. Not typically, but the best case can be a 3-month period. The point is it does take some time to actually process this report all the way to a bylaw. So on this next slide is the steps that make up that yellow bullet from before. We have a report completed. Now we hand that report to the township, which is now completed as well. The township schedules the meeting to consider the report and then notifies the public of that meeting. And here we are tonight then to consider this report document. So tonight the council needs to look at the design of the system and the estimated costs. You'll notice I have not mentioned anything about assessment. That discussion is reserved for the next meeting. And it's important to keep the two separate just to basically stay as productive as possible. So after tonight's meeting, assuming that the council accepts the report, then the council is also going to pass a provisional bylaw and they'll schedule the quarter revision. So the quarter revision is the very first meeting in the appeals process. It must occur. It can't, even if there are no appeals, the quarter revision still must sit. And the township will also be providing instructions on exactly when that court will be held and how to appeal if a landowner chooses to appeal. So that's the very next step as far as public meetings goes. After that, there's the tribunal and referee appeals. Hopefully that isn't necessary, but once you get through all the appeal process or all the appeal windows or deal with all the appeals, whichever comes second, then the council can move forward with passing a bylaw. So returning back to the previous process, the higher level one, again, we're in the processing the report right now, but once we pass through that, then we're into tendering. I anticipate tendering being later this winter. And then construction moving on into the summer. That's kind of the timeline that I would expect for this project. Is there any questions on anything I've presented?
You'll have to stop share. Oh, thank you. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, you're on mute.
It has to happen once in a while. I'll now call upon the members of the public who are attending online and wish to speak to this this evening. Please raise your hand electronically, and when called upon, state your name, spell your surname, and please provide your address prior to making your presentation. So I now look for anybody from the public who wishes to speak to this. You'll please raise your hand. I see Mr. Hessel's on there. I'm going to guess that you want to speak. I don't see your hand raised, but
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, and I don't see anybody else. So if you'd state your name, spell your surname and your address, please, and then you can make your presentation.
Okay, it's Ted Hessels, Hessels, 73272 Robertson Road.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
And we're sticking to the technical aspect of the report this evening as the engineer spoke. So go ahead, Mr.
Okay. Well, I think the maintenance does fall under that page 14 and 16. Like the property owners on the upstream of Gracie Road, they get two types of assessment for maintenance. I don't know if you can explain that, why that would be.
Okay, we'll look to either our superintendent or the engineer to speak to that, please.
I can comment if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Brickman.
You noted pages 14, 15, and 16. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So there's so for instance, if I refer to your property, Ted Hustle's. Just going to try to find it here.
.36 on page 14, near the top.
Thank you. There it is. Thank you. Okay, so Ted Hustle's occurs on the open ditch. Okay, sorry. So on page 14, at the very top, it says schedule de-assessment for maintenance. Then the next row down from that is lot apart concession landowner. And then right below that lot apart is the open ditch. So this page 14 and 15 refers to the maintenance of the open ditch work. So for instance, if there is a clean out, well, there will be a clean out someday in the future, this is the schedule to be used for maintenance. Page 16, your name occurs a second time, right? And as you noted, it's just the upper people in the watershed that are included. This is for the man crossing, the David Mann crossing on station 1+717. So the man crossing is going to become, when we construct it, will become part of the municipal drain. And there is a separate maintenance schedule should maintenance be required on that crossing someday in the future. For instance, if some riprap needed to be placed around the end, like as end treatment or something like that, this is the schedule to use in that case. And actually, if you look at that one, if you see the David Mann property on page 16, the assessment to that property is 55%, substantially higher than anyone else.
Okay, that kind of explains that. Okay, and if I looked at page 2, section 6 under findings, would you say that this drain was long overdue for a new engineer's report?
That's a difficult question to answer. I look at that drain and it is in a poor state of repair. What would cause a new engineer's report? It always is caused by the landowner's request, I would say, and or the townships, like if the road authority or something needed it. But typically, it's caused by a landowner request. I definitely do find that it is in a poor state of repair.
Okay, I do have a few questions here for you. So, okay, on the part that proposed to be abandoned, does it have any impact on the rest of the drain?
The abandoned portion?
The abandoned portion, yeah. Well, it has.
Yeah, the abandoned portion, it only affects the people it's on their property and what's upstream, which isn't very many other people.
Yeah, so it doesn't. So the cost of construction is a whole lot less that it's abandoned. Maintenance in the future, it would be a lot less cost. And the other thing, I imagine it would reduce sediment and runoff entering the drain. Would you have an opinion on that?
Essentially, closed drainage system versus open?
Yeah, so I'm saying there'd be a lot less sediment going into the bottom portion of the drain. So I know I'm asking you some questions, and I have reason to ask them because it's been a long process. Okay, so yeah, so I'm saying that part's being abandoned. It has no negative impacts on the drain. Would you agree with that?
I can say there's no problem with our report abandoning the drain. I don't have, if there was some sort of issue, I wouldn't be allowing it to be abandoned.
Okay.
As far as this goes.
And another thing, when the township does abandon the drain, they hold no liability for if there's ever any adverse conditions like in our property. Like they're not responsible for anything. I believe if I looked at section 84, if they would have just went with abandonment, they could just sign off and it wouldn't have had no liability. So, So, and then I guess the other thing I want to ask you is how much engineering resources did it take to come to the conclusion to abandon this part of the drain?
The engineering resource, it's to look at an abandonment, basically, it's oftentimes a site visit, and then also looking at the documentation that there is for the drain too, who's affected, that sort of thing. That's, yeah, I guess kind of a generic answer there. In this case, I mean, well, we wouldn't be recommending abandonment if we thought there was an issue.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll leave the other questions when we do the appeal, because you brought that up. So, or the assessment part. So I guess I would have I'll leave that for the next one too. I did have a question for council and staff, but anyways, thanks for your information, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hessels. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this, please? Mr. Hessels, if you could turn off your camera and microphone, that would be great. Anyone else like to speak to this, please? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else. Is there, sorry? Oh, public, yeah. From the public?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other public. Okay. Okay, so now we have to move into the revision quarter. Do you have any questions from councillors first? I guess we'll do that first. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, so I just have one question for the engineer. So looking at the first map he put up, and it showed the open ditch and then the drain, the part that's being abandoned, but it's been put in, I'm taking it with tile drain. So at some point, that water that goes through the tile drains ends up in the municipal drain. So you have to size your ditches according to that. You still get the same water. It might take a little longer to get there, but you still get the water coming through our municipal drain. Is that not right?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. The drainage system absolutely, like the watershed is a watershed. So yeah, all the water is still passing through the drain. If it's tile drain, for instance, you may have to, in this case, adjust the depth of the open ditch in order to accommodate the tile, right?
That's what I was getting at, because the questions were, was there any cost to it? But yes, that was all part of the engineering to go down, is you take into account the water that comes through that as well. Is that not right?
Yeah, oh yeah, you have to.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
That's just trying to get something clear in my. Don't do municipal drains. I do enough ditching, but just thought I'd ask.
Anybody else have any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none. Read the following motion that report DSR 001-2021 regarding consideration of the Indian Creek Municipal Drain be received, and that a bylaw be given 2 readings to provisionally adopt the Indian Creek Municipal Drain 2020 report dated November 27, 2020, prepared by Dietrich Engineering Limited under Section 78, Chapter D, 17 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990. And that staff be directed to advance the Indian Creek Municipal Drain 2020 report to the Court of Revision as per Section 46(1) of the Drainage Act 1990. And now we have to have 3 councillors who would like to sit on the drainage meeting here, Court of Revision. So who would like to volunteer as we did before? Councillor Van Vliet, Councillor McClellan, and Councillor Cridland are the 3 people to go in there. So that these councillors be appointed as members to the Indian Creek Municipal Drain 2020 Court of Revision, and Councillor Gilmore Gilmore be appointed as the alternative by tentatively scheduled for February 25th, 2021. And that upon completion of the appeal process, the drainage superintendent be authorized to proceed with construction of the drainage works in accordance with the Drainage Act. So we have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet. Any further discussion? So that's February the 25th. Seeing no other discussion, Councillor Cridland, yay or nay?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. Okay. We'll move on to the Bridgewater drain, third reading to adopt the engineer's report. Mr. Jemison, would you give us another overview of that one, please?
Great. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So Drainage Staff Report 3 is just recommending the third reading of the updated Bridgewater drain report. So as the engineer just spoke about for Indian Creek, we've gone through that period of appeals and we received one and we passed through that. So passing this bylaw will allow us to get started on the tender process and hopefully get the drain constructed this summer.
Okay, thank you. The motion is Drainage Staff Report DSR 003-2021 respecting Bridgewater drain, third reading to adopt engineer be received. And that bylaw number 47-2020 of the Bridgewater drain be given a third reading and passed. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor. Councillor Van Vliet, Councillor McClellan. And is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, in favor or opposed, Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And that is carried. Okay, thank you, Mark. And now we'll move on to our fire staff report, fourth quarter review. We'll look to Chief Alcock to give a briefing on that, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This first report, FSR 01 2020, is the fourth quarter review of the FD fire department operations and projects for the fourth quarter. I'll get right into the administrative and personnel review. In October, we began the selection process for lieutenants at stations 2, 3, and 4. We were able to fill those positions and they began their new roles on January 1st. Due to a series of personal changes, time restrictions, the training officer unfortunately did step down from their role. The manager of human resources and myself did independent exit interviews in an attempt to identify some strengths and weaknesses for that position. And that information will be used to guide our leadership team as that position is currently under review. I would like to take the time to thank the previous training officer for their hard work and dedication for the last 3 years. It should be noted that the success that we've had in our positive growth largely rests with the training that was developed and delivered by that individual. So that position, he will be missed in that position. Moving on to recruitment, beginning in September and running through the end of December, we continued with our recruitment selection process for the probationary class of 2021. We conducted an information session on October 1st. We had 15 candidates complete written testing on October 28th. We conducted panel interviews on the 21st, and the candidates completed physical testing on November 28th. By mid-December, we offered 7 candidates offer letters, and we do have 7 they all accepted, and they began their recruit training program on January 14th. We continue to actively engage potential candidates that have existing experience. That allows us to bolster our personnel targets, also improve daytime response, and reduce training costs as they already have experience in training when they join. And as of today, we do have 2 active professional firefighters that have joined the ranks, and they also began their orientation on the 14th. So as of January 1st, that now brings our current roster to 55 active members. Moving to fire prevention public education, Fire Prevention Week was October 4th to 10th. With the theme of Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen. Due to COVID-19, we were only able to attend 2 schools. Typically, we attend all 4, but we were able to get into 2 and deliver pub ed materials and messaging there. And from an inspection perspective, one of the schools did request that we conduct a fire and life safety inspection right before Christmas break. The building itself was compliant, but there was some recommendations made to ensure continued compliance. Moving on to operations, in the final quarter of 2020, we responded to 44 calls for service, including 3 structure fires. 8 motor vehicle accidents, 10 emergency assists, with the majority of those occurring on the storm of November 15th. And we responded to 2 mutual aid requests for the city of Port Colborne while they were on large structure fires. As noted in Appendix A, you'll see that our overall call volume was down 32%, with the largest drop being in medical calls. This is largely due to the change in the response protocol that was initiated by Niagara EMS. At the beginning of the COVID response, there was a region-wide PPE shortage. And so in an attempt to maintain operations both in EMS and fire, we had reduced the types of calls that we were responding to. Now that the PPE supply has stabilized, on December 14th, all of the Niagara Region Fire Departments returned to the tiered medical response following the pre-COVID-19 protocols. I'd also like to highlight that you'll see that our structure fires and other serious incidents were almost doubled over the year previous. That's been widely reported across the province by the Office of the Fire Marshal and many other municipalities. Unfortunately, when people spend more time at home, carelessness occurs and we end up with more structure fires than normal. Moving on to our apparatus, equipment, and facilities. As I've reported previously, aging apparatus continue to be a cost driver. We did have one suspension failure on one of the older trucks. And as such, following an investigation, we found out that there were some serious design deficiencies, and we've had to remove a bunch of equipment on that, which has resulted in a reduction of the operational capabilities for that particular apparatus in that station. Also noting that engine 2 is a 99 International, so it's now at 21 years old. It's no longer recognized, so that places us in a position where fire underwriters has reduced the level or the insurance grading of both fire stations 1 and 2. So that'll be something that we'll have to consider at budget time to address those issues. As for the respiratory protection program, the fit tester was delivered in December, stating staff have been training on its use, and all fire personnel should be fit tested on the new KN95 respirators by mid-January. The compressor and fill station was delivered and installed last week. We're waiting for air samples and the certification to occur there before it's fully operational. And the SCBAs are set to be delivered next week. We started virtual orientation and training last night. We have some demo units that we'll be rolling out to the firefighters for some practical training. And the go live date or the in-service date is scheduled for early February. As previously reported, many of the capital projects that were on the facilities for stations 3 and 4 upgrades were initially put on hold while the municipality kind of adjusted to its response to COVID-19. Once staff were given the green light to proceed, we began working to have many of those projects completed. There are some items remaining, some of them larger, that will need to be carried into 2021. But as we all know, continued building improvements will need to be completed to extend the useful life. That was reported during the building assessment provided by Kalos years ago. Training in all operations of the fire department continue to happen. We've adjusted to ensure the safety of all personnel, moving virtually in small groups. And fire department personnel continue with their professional development and various NFPA certifications, including the recruit class of 2021, where they wrote their Firefighter 1 certification and Firefighter 2 in October. As always, we'll continue to operate safely and efficiently as possible and look forward to further progress in 2021. And that's it for this one.
Hey, thank you, Chief. I have a motion then that respecting FSR 001 2021, fourth quarter report, fire and emergency services review be received for information. Move it in a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McClellan, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor or opposed? Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
And Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Okay, that is carried. So now we'll move on to FSR 002 2021, the RFP for the architectural design engineering contract administration for the design of Waynflete Fire and Emergency Service Central Station. And I'll look to the Chief to give another briefing on that, please.
Okay. This second report provides information regarding the RFP issuance, review, evaluation, and recommendation process. As directed by council at the special meeting held December 1st, staff prepared an RFP for the architectural design and engineering and contract administration for the project, based on option 9 of the concept study. Basic program requirements for that were outlined in the table on page 2 of the report, and the published RFP can be found in Appendix A. The RFP was issued and published on the township's website on December 18th, and an online bidding website, Bid and Go, published our RFP, their website, on January 7th. There were 2 addendas issued. The first was to answer some questions about submissions and address grading concerns. The second addenda was issued in response to the provincial stay-at-home order. Proponents have requested that their submissions be received in digital format instead of hard copies. Both addendas can be found as in Appendices B and C. On January 19th at 2 p.m., the RFP closed and the township was provided with 5 proposals from 5 different firms. The submissions were in the form of 2 envelope, or in this case, 2 e-file process, where the proposal was actually submitted separately from the fees. This provided the evaluation committee the ability to grade the submissions on experience, comprehensiveness, professionalism, and merit, unbiased of knowing what the costs were. The RFP committee, consisting of the CAO, treasurer, manager of operations, deputy fire chief, and myself, were all given copies of the proposals and the evaluation forms to be reviewed and graded independently. The grading criteria is outlined on page 2 and 3 of the report, and the revised form, evaluation form, was included in Addenda 1, or also as Appendix B. Once all the members completed their reviews, the committee met and tallied the scores from each member. Once that was completed, the second envelopes, or e-files, the fees schedule was opened and the fees were read out. The fees were then graded following the process outlined in the RFP, and the final points were calculated. As a result, the proponent with the highest score, who's not the lowest bidder, but is one that represents experience and value. I would like to note that prior to including the fees, the top 3 submissions were all within 70 points of each other. This indicates that the submissions we received were equal and that the independent grading process was fair. In review of the fees submitted, staff reviewed Administrative Staff Report 16/2020, which was the financial overview report, which outlined the various budgeted components of the project. And I've attached that report as Appendix D to this one. In 2019, Council approved Phase 1 of the project, which included an estimated $270,000 for architect and engineering. If we use 5% inflation as previously reported, it should be expected that component of the project would be about $300,000. The proponent with the highest score, their proposal came in at $274,500. And again, this isn't the lowest price received, but it's well within the estimates for the project. In following the evaluation process and calculating the scores, staff recommend that Council award the contract for architectural design, engineering and contract administration to Raimondo and Associates Architects from Niagara Falls. They have experience in fire station design. Some of them we toured. They provided supporting information while we were doing our concept study process, and the firm has worked for many municipalities within Niagara region. Some of their projects include West Lincoln Station 1, Lincoln Station 4, Port Colborne, Pelham 3, Thorold Station 2, Niagara Falls 6, and most recently the amalgamated station of Fort Erie Stations 4 and 6, and they were awarded the tender for West Lincoln Station 2. It has been noted by the architect that the proposed budgets and schedules may change due to circumstances beyond the architect's control. Some of the recommendations that they provided to mitigate those risks include a refined scope, timely decision-making and approvals, and a clearly defined expectation of roles and responsibilities. Some of those things can be addressed in a document similar to a project charter. Should Council award the contract, staff also request that staff be authorized to begin working with the project immediately following the pre-approved scope. And that's it.
Thank you. So the motion for this is the Fire Staff Report 02/2021, respecting the request for proposal for architectural design, engineering, and Contract Administration, RFPFS Station 2020-001 be received. And that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with Raimondo and Associates Architects for architectural design, engineering, and contract administration for the design of Waynflete Fire and Emergency Services Central Station for $274,500, not including HST. And the staff be delegated the authority to proceed with the Central Station project based on the concept design as approved by council. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. And discussion, please. Councillor McClellan.
Really happy to see this came in. The price of this sounds good. I have one thing that I would really like to see is when the architect finishes conceptual drawings or before he goes into his final, that they come before council and show us what they're going with, just in case we see something that maybe we want to change. We're spending a lot of money here. And then again, once before it goes out to tender, so we know what we're getting. Other than that, I'm in favor of this 100%. And it's not that I'm against it. I just think we should get a couple of look-sees at it on the process.
Okay. The only danger I see in that is that we want to make a little change, and then next thing you're adding on months and months to architectural drawing, and then the cost of inflation adds on to it. That I don't know if that's realistic or not, but
I don't see it as making changes. I think to be transparent, we should all see what's being done before it goes as it's being done.
Okay, fair point.
It's a quick meeting.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, seeing none. Motion is on the floor. Take the vote in favor or opposed. Councillor Cridland.
Oh, wait, sorry, Mayor, I may have missed that small window. So based on Councillor McClellan's request, I would just amend the motion that we're about to vote on then and just add, and that a minimum of 2 meetings are added where these points are brought back to council. I saw the chief nodding, so if we could add that as a motion, that would be great. Amend the motion accordingly to what Councillor McClellan was requesting. I'd like to see that in there. So if that's friendly or not, I don't know.
No, we can just add that in, Will. I don't think we need to. It's not a motion by any of the councillors. So Meredith?
Where is she?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 12 Council, that can be a friendly amendment if you wish. Yes, it can just be added on.
Okay.
If all of council agrees, then yes.
Okay, friendly amendment. Chief Alcott?
Yeah, in the RFP that was sent out, there was a schedule of all of the steps to be taken. And at the end of every one of those steps, there will be a report that comes to council before we move on to the next step.
So that's already built into the process. So do we actually need to amend the motion if it's already built into the process?
It certainly can't.
I'll leave that to Councillor McClellan.
John?
I can't see it hurt. I just want to make sure we get a look-see at it. That's all.
Okay, so I would propose that we don't need to change the motion because within the context of the report, it's already in there that we do get reports back. And that's correct, Chief? So
no. I want to see this, not a report. I want to see the drawings that come in. I don't want to get a report saying this. I want to sit down and see the thing.
Okay, so we'll leave it in as a friendly amendment then?
Yeah.
And so everybody's happy with that? Any other discussion? Sorry, Donna, I missed you there again, but any other discussion? Councillor Van Vliet?
Mr. Mayor, the meetings where we get to see the drawings or whatever, they don't necessarily have to be council meetings, right? Scheduled meetings because time is of the essence. Can we just do them? Oh, Chief wants to talk, sorry.
I'll look to the chief, thank you.
So the way it works for council to give approval to staff to proceed the next step, it would have to be a council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's happy? Okay, opposed or in favor of receiving this? Councillor Cridland?
In favor?
Councillor Gilmore,
Favor.
Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor McClellan,
In favor.
and I am in favor. That is carried. Okay, moving on. Does anybody need a bio break or anything? No.
I'm gonna run and get a bottle of water if you don't mind.
Okay, we'll recess for 5 minutes. Recess for 5 minutes. Okay, that's reconvene now of Waynflete Council after a short recess. We're moving on to PSR 001-2021, request for site plan exemption, Benberg Farm and Industrial Equipment Limited. And I know our planner has been working on this quite a bit. I'll ask our planner to speak to it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to all of council. So my report provides information on the history of site plan control, as well as information regarding the process for exemption to assist council with the request made by Benberg Farm and Industrial Equipment. So as council will remember, at the previous council meeting, Brandon Berg appeared as a delegation and requested that their project be exempt from site plan control. So their project consists of a 25,000 square foot building containing a showroom, service area, offices, and a warehouse, as well as a new septic system and stormwater management pond. So under the township's site plan control bylaw, the project is required to go through a level 1 site plan approval as it's located within a commercially zoned property. Pre-consultation meetings were held in May of 2019 and October of 2020 with myself, other representatives from the township, and representatives from Niagara Region and the Conservation Authority. So the Benberg team has been working on application requirements, including design of the stormwater management pond and environmental impact study. However, requested that the required archaeological assessment be waived through a site plan exemption, as the assessment would cause further delay to their project. You'll recall that Mr. Berg provided some examples from our neighboring municipality, the city of Welland, where site plan approval was certain significant projects, both residential and commercial or industrial projects, were exempted from site plan control. I had the opportunity to speak with the manager of planning at the city of Welland, and in their site plan control bylaw, they have language in there that provides discretion to the manager as to when to waive site plan control. The township's bylaw does not have the same language, and so there's no exemption policies built into our current bylaw. So any requests for exemption must be granted by council, and that could be done this evening through a motion. I guess I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, and council, if you have any questions regarding the report to assist with your consideration of the request.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll move straight in, before any motion, straight into council discussion. Is there any discussion, questions with our planner that in regards to this? Councilor McClellan? You're on mute. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be to Sarah. I seem to have lost most of my thing. It died when I walked away, and I'm trying to get it back. But there was one point in there that it talked about that it was mandatory to have one by the province if it was near a water course or in a low spot off of a high spot. And it said in there that it was mandatory. So I don't know if that's a provincial thing, if we have the right to do it. I might suggest that it's only a small area, and maybe, I think in this area, there's 3 First Nations that claim heritage rights to this area, that the Bergs or their contractor make a phone call to them and see if they can get a waive on it. And like I say, it's maybe a half an acre that they're disturbing. They may be able to get a waive or a pass on this from that, and then this goes away, right? I mean, but if it says, if I read that right, I can't remember what page it was on, Sarah, but there was one of your comments that it was mandatory at that point. And I really don't want to see us breaking provincial laws.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McClellan and all of council. So the archaeology assessment is only required when a Planning Act application is triggered. So in this case, it's a site plan application. So the same would be triggered for a zoning amendment or a severance application, official plan amendment. Those are Planning Act applications that could trigger these requirements. The requirements for a building permit are different. So if council were to waive site plan control for this project this evening, they would go right to the building permit stage. Under provincial law, at a building permit stage, they're not required to complete that assessment. However, during construction activities on site, should they come across something, they are obligated under law to stop all activities and consult with the Ministry of Heritage, Tourism, Sport, and Culture Industries. And that is a legal requirement. If they don't do that, then there are serious repercussions to proceeding with construction. So in terms of council considering this request, we're not breaking the law by exempting them from site plan control. Because like I said, just a building permit application submission does not have the same requirements as a Planning Act application.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Any follow-up there, Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I mean, if you get started digging and you find something, then you pay for all the equipment sitting there, you pay for the men, you pay your contractor, you pay everybody. The bill just starts rolling in. I mean, again, this is from my years of experience at this. The other thing is, we were the council that put in that we acknowledge that we're on 2 First Nations lands. And I mean, I don't know if this looks so good, guys.
Okay.
I'm not trying to force it, but when I read Sarah's thing, it kind of struck.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Vliet, you had your hand up, I believe.
I didn't, but I can.
Okay. Sorry, I thought it was up.
Yeah,
No, that's okay. I'm looking at the exemptions that were granted for Riverside Christian Reform and Decker's General Repair, which are down on Wellingport Road. So those were 2014. Terry, do you have any knowledge of those, or?
No, I don't. Wasn't they were granted prior to the election of 2014, I would assume.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It says April 2014. April. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I can't comment on what those were about.
Okay. If we're speaking about doing the exemption, I'm in favor of it. I understand that I was the one who brought the land acknowledgement to council, but Bergs has been there. Sorry, I just lost my leg. Bergs has been there for 75 years, if not longer. Soil's been moved in and out. My children have been there playing. So it's all been moved around and dug up. So who's to know what was there and what wasn't there? And if you have to stop, if you find something anyway, it's already built in. So I'm in favor of this, just throwing it out there. I don't want to hold back one of our Waynflete businesses who may or may not be courted by another municipality to come there. So I'm just going to put that out there too.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Van Vliet. Councillor, anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think, the applicant has indicated by his own admission that this is a timing thing. So from what I've seen in the delegation, he is, or they have been extremely compliant on all aspects of their application, and obviously competent in getting through all the challenges that any project could have. However, I don't see it being a help where the region and the province have identified that this is a high potential area, and then putting them in jeopardy of losing more time. So I'm not, if there's nothing there, then it's do the study, and if there is something there, then do the study. So I see a real disconnect around why this one aspect is the aspect that we're being asked to waive, when he's been able to get through all the rest. So I don't see supporting this at this time, but I'm again willing to listen to all the rest of the comments. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan again.
I don't have a problem waiving it. I see where the problem is going to come back and bite him. And it's going to cost him a fortune if he does find something, because everything stops. You pay for manpower, you pay for equipment, you pay extra time on the job. I've seen all this. So my suggestion is we can waive it, but I would strongly suggest that you go and talk to the 3 First Nations that are involved in it before he puts a shovel in the ground, right? I mean, like I say, we were the ones that said we're on traditional lands. I just don't want to see a local business get built for hundreds of thousands of dollars in waiting time because you thought you were rushing to do something.
Okay, if I may comment on that, but they are the ones who have asked for this, knowing that if they come across archaeological finds, they know already, because I had conversations with them, that they would have to stop. And yet they have proceeded to ask for this. So they obviously have weighed that all in on their decision prior to asking for this exemption. So I think that that's basically covered off. Is there any, and I'm pretty sure they know that if they run across things, I mean, I was up there talking to them. So I think that's basically covered off. Is there any other discussion? And if not, I'd like to have a motion to receive the report. And if somebody would like to make a motion one way or the other here, and we can vote on that. Councillor Cridland.
Could I just ask for a recorded vote in the minutes then, please?
Certainly. Would somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Gilmore.
I will move that we receive the report and grant the exemption.
Okay, and that's moved. Have a seconder for that, Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote. Councillor Cridland.
Opposed.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor, but I'm worried.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. The exemption is granted. Okay. We're just getting towards the end here. Review of correspondence.
Mr. Mayor?
Mayor, point of order. I think you skipped a report, just for the record, at least in my agenda, from the treasurer, unless I'm missing something.
No, I have my stuff straight from request for site plan exemption to review of correspondence.
Okay, sorry. All right, no, never mind. I see what I was looking at. My apologies.
Am I wrong, Will, or go ahead, Will?
For you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct, right from the planning report to correspondence. But if I could, just before leaving the planning report, one of the elements of the report suggested that council, if there was an appetite from council to have a review of our site plan control bylaw to see if council was interested in establishing any specific criteria moving forward in the future, should exemptions be considered by the municipality to certain types or certain classifications of applications. And was there an appetite for council to look at that moving forward?
Okay. Yes, we did discuss that the other day. Councillor McClellan?
I have no appetite to look at that. I feel sorry for these guys. Their prime contractor went bankrupt. They had to start all over. In most cases, you have plenty of time to have this done. I get it where it happened. And it's part of life. You have to do it.
One of the conversations I had with the mayor of another municipality was that they in fact did do that. They made their bylaws a little easier for creating growth in their community. Obviously for us, smart growth and spaced nicely and following all our bylaws, but they did create some bylaws, and that's what Will is referring to in that sense. So If anybody's interested, we could ask staff to do a report on that and come back to us. And then, of course, we always have the ultimate say of saying no to it, going from there. Councillor Gilmore.
Well, just my personal view on that is that they're quite few and far between, and I prefer to just address them individually at the time that they come up, which this has been 7 years since one's come up. So I don't want to create take a broad brush to what we're doing now, and we can consider things, and depending on the scenario.
Okay, well then, doesn't seem to be any appetite for it. We'll leave that for now, and it's always something that we can look at in the future if we feel we need to. Okay, review of correspondence. C003-2021, request to review and approve amending agreement to Niagara Region Intermunicipal Agreement to advance the Vision Zero program. Any discussion on this correspondence? Will, go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is a correspondence from the region advising of an initiative that's being undertaken there regarding the implementation of basically traffic cameras in certain high risk areas, if you will. And what the region is proposing is an amendment to the intermunicipal agreement regarding provincial offenses revenues in order to sort of fund that program through provincial offenses revenues as opposed to being funded directly from the regional tax levy. Any sort of amendment to that intermunicipal agreement would result in impacts to the lower tier municipalities, which currently share POA revenues region-wide. This is sort of an initial sort of warning that this is coming. If you review the last paragraph of the letter, you will see that regional council did request that the amending agreement be modified, and that there will be forthcoming a more detailed analysis when that final agreement amendment is presented to the lower tiers for consideration. The only point that I would make is that, again, this is a sort of regional initiative to assist dealing with traffic issues, primarily on regional roads, primarily in urban centers. Really won't affect Waynflete because we don't have many regional roads with high risk traffic areas such as school zones and retirement homes, that sort of thing, hospitals. Again, we'll have a more fulsome discussion when all that stuff comes back, but we wanted this in front of you early because it will be coming again in the future.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'm looking for a motion on that just to receive it, or is there any other discussion on it that anybody wants to put forth? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Cridland.
No, I was just going to make the motion then to receive.
Okay, motion is made. Have a seconder. Councillor Van Vliet seconds it. And yay or nay, Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
Yay.
Councillor Gilmore?
Doesn't count. In favor.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
it counts.
It's getting late. Somebody's getting tired.
And I'm in favor. That's carried. Waynflete Agricultural Society is requesting funding for annual fall fair. Any discussion on this item? This is in regards to the tables, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, tables. Any discussion? Councillor Van Vliet?
Did I read somewhere that there's a grant from the provincial government to help assist like events and fairs and whatnot that they could apply for the grant? Anybody aware of that?
Sorry, perhaps Will could speak to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is, I believe, one of the recently announced initiatives, actually as part of the Roma conference that happened
That's
just.
I heard it. Sorry.
And we're still waiting for more details, but there is some funding that is being made available to certain societies in order to assist them during this COVID transition. Again, we don't have the full details yet other than the announcement, but that is a potential source of revenue to assist with this.
Okay.
Okay, so would we direct them, Will, to, or help them with an application or give them some guidance on that? How would that work? Go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps the way to do it would be to refer this request through the township's budget or budgetary and grant process. In the meantime, there can be some exploration into those alternative funding sources. But if that falls through, then at least we have sort of a target to move this forward within our own area of control.
Okay, so then I don't need a motion to refer, do we, or defer? Refer, yes. Okay, I have a motion to refer, please, to budget discussions. Councillor McClellan, seconded by Councillor Gilmore. Any discussion? Seeing none, Councillor McClellan, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Okay, so that is referred to our budget process. The final one is in correspondence, appointment of Joint Board of Management Niagara Courts member. And I don't know if Mr. Gudgeon is with us, but Will, you can speak to that, I believe.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we've been contacted by Niagara Region advising that it's our turn to appoint a representative to represent the township on the Joint Board of Management of the Provincial Offences Courts. Again, it's a rotating membership amongst a number of the lower tier municipalities. And what they are requiring for the membership, it's an administrative staff position from the township. And historically, it has been our bylaw enforcement officer who has the most direct provincial offences courts contact as our appointee. Mark Tardif has been appointed in the past, and the recommendation coming from staff is that he be reappointed for this current term.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wish to make that motion? Councillor Van Vliet is making the motion that our bylaw officer be appointed, seconded by Councillor Gilmore. Any discussion? Councillor McCollum.
How much time does this take up of Mark's, just out of curiosity more than anything?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In my time when I was on the committee when I was in Lincoln, and there's basically quarterly meetings. So it's usually one afternoon a quarter. Not very often. The meetings are not overly extensive. The only time they have any special meetings come up is if there are certain critical issues that may arise. But otherwise, it's basically one afternoon per quarter.
2 days for the year, yeah, no big deal.
Okay, so that motion is on the floor, and we'll now vote. Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I'm in favor, and that is carried. Moving on to number 13 on the agenda. We have one bylaw to be read and passed this evening and one to be provisionally adopted. So the first one is that bylaw 47/2020, being a bylaw to provide for drainage works in the Township of Wainfleet in the region of Niagara, Bridgewater drain. Third and final reading be read and passed this 26th day of January 2021. Mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. Any discussion? Seeing none, in favor or opposed, Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
And Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. And the final bylaw, that bylaw number 002/2021, being a bylaw to provide for drainage works in the Township of Wainfleet in the region of Niagara, Indian Creek Drain, be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted this 26th day of January 2021. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Councillor McClellan, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Seeing none, yay or nay. Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
Yay.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
And I am yay. That is carried. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. There's no closed meeting this evening. There's no rise and report. So simply the bylaw to confirm our meeting, and that the bylaw 003-2021 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of council at its meeting held January 19th, 2021 and January 26th, 2021 be read and passed this 26th day of January 2021. Move in a seconder, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor Gilmore. No, any discussion? No. Any discussion? Seeing none. The recorded vote. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Yay.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And that is carried. I'm in favor. This meeting is adjourned. You guys, that was a lot of work we did tonight.
It was. Can we do the next one in person? Because
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
this drives me nuts.